went down the road, we actually come across a fully skinned.
Very squatchy. So it makes sense that Bigfoots would be here too.
We may have found a hotspot.
It's one of the only recordings of a deep moaning howl from a big male Sasquatch. Very squatchy.
The elusive Bigfoot, is it real or is it fake? Some people think this cryptid is a gigantic ape species, one with a fossil record. Before I dive into this theory and, to be honest, completely dismantle it, let's talk about the gigantic ape that people claim is the living, breathing, and totally real Bigfoot. This is Gigantopithecus. In 1935, a gentleman named Gustav van Koenigsweg was in Hong Kong looking for dragon bones, better known as fossils. He was in an apothecary, and in a display case, he discovered some molars that were about 2 times the width of human molars. He purchased them and then began studying them. At first, it was speculated that these fossils belonged to a giant hominid. And as a result, Gustav named the species of these fossils Gigantopithecus blackeye, which was named in honor of a Canadian paleontologist named Davison Black. He later found more to continue his studies, and in ways that are not quite clear, Gustav determined the animal that had these teeth must have been from southern China, like Guangdong and Guangxi. In 1955, a survey team collected 47 shipments that were destined for these Chinese apothecaries, and all the teeth were collected from those regions in southern China. Only a year later did a team of scientists find their first specimen out in the field. What's up, bud? What you doing? Trying to make a decision if he wants to get on my lap. So anyways, 1 year later, a team of scientists find their first specimen out in the field. It was found in a cave in Guangxi. This cave was later named the Gigantopithecus cave, and this launched a frenzy of discoveries where fossils belonging to Gigantopithecus were found in 7 different caves. Later, some other fossils have been found in Vietnam and Thailand, but they have really been placed more in the unsure category, as they could belong to Gigantopithecus or possibly an extinct orangutan species. However, all of the discoveries consisted of finding teeth, mainly molars and jaws. And ages of these range from 2 million years ago to 100,000 years ago. So one big question was, well, why haven't we found any of the other parts of this animal? It's never guaranteed that an animal's bones will be fossilized, which is kind of crazy to think about, right? For every species that has been fossilized and found, there are likely millions of species that haven't been fossilized or found even while they're fossilized. It's just kind of a testament of like how much life is beaming from this planet. But for Gigantopithecus, we believe the main reason we haven't found anything else outside of molars and jaws is because of porcupines. Yes, porcupines. There are a lot of animals that rely on bones for their calcium intake, and where the fossils have been found, porcupines were abundant. So it's very likely that the porcupines got to the rest of the Gigantopithecus bones before researchers did, those corrupt thieves. But nonetheless, based on the size of the jaws and the teeth, it could be inferred that this animal was absolutely massive. We determined that they could grow to be about 10 feet tall and 1,200 pounds. And so already that's kind of lining up with the sightings that people count when they see a Bigfoot. Usually Bigfoot is reaching heights of 10 feet tall. I'll get into more of that in just a bit. With apes, a lot of times you see sexual dimorphism. And so it is believed that Gigantopithecus displayed similar sexual dimorphism as well. This is a term to describe that males and females just look a little different. So female orangutan, male orangutan, that's sexual dimorphism. As we got savvier with our researching tools, we started to learn more about this gigantic ape. Scientists looked at the carbon composition of the fossils to get a better idea of what it ate and what type of habitat it lived in. So basically, when we eat, our body assimilates the chemical composition of what we eat. If you look at the carbon isotopes, you can determine whether the animal lived in cool, humid areas if it had a high amount of C3 in it, or hotter, drier areas if it has a lot of C4. And then from that information, you could kind of determine what it is that they generally ate. Gigantopithecus had a very high amount of C3 in it, so it was probably exclusive to the cool forest in southern China at the time when it was extant. Therefore, it ate seeds, fruits, and grasses that were present in such forests. Now, I mentioned before that in the beginning of this discovery, it was believed that Gigantopithecus was some kind of giant hominid, like we hominids went through some kind of gigantic phase. And within the Homo family tree, it was believed that Gigantopithecus was this offshoot of humans' lineage, kind of like Paranthropus. This was a hominid that essentially led to an evolutionary dead end. Rest in peace. After additional studies related to family trees, it became increasingly clear that while Gigantopithecus was an ape, it was probably more closely related to the Pongo family, or orangutans. So no homo, but unlike orangutans, which are almost exclusively arboreal, scientists do not believe Gigantopithecus spent any time in the trees due to its size. Instead, it is widely believed that Gigantopithecus was a quadruped and may even have walked on its fists, much like orangutans do today. Okay, so why is it that some believe that Gigantopithecus could be Bigfoot? After all, Bigfoot is associated with North America, and Gigantopithecus has only been found in southern China. So what prompted this theory? Well, my friends, these people are idiots. I'm just kidding. I don't want to say that. Just kidding. But I'm going to go into this theory a little bit, and then I'm going to dismantle it. So yeah, I want to break down why it makes no sense to suggest that Gigantopithecus is the most logical explanation for Bigfoot. And I do want to emphasize that it is considered one of the more plausible theories out there because some people believe that Bigfoot are aliens, interdimensional beings, or just some kind of wild man. But we're here specifically for the Gigantopithecus story. Mainstream science believes that Gigantopithecus was so specialized and adapted to the forest in the southern regions of China that it couldn't really adapt to the expansion of grasslands that took place as the Pleistocene ended. But Bigfoot researchers believe that Gigantopithecus did adapt, and it migrated northward and crossed the Bering Sea land bridge. There, it took up residence in the forests of the Pacific Northwest. Bigfoot researchers think the forests in the Pacific Northwest are similar enough to the cool forests of southern China. So once it crossed the Bering Sea land bridge, they adapted just fine. And today, the Pacific Northwest is kind of the headquarters for Bigfoot sightings. This theory was first introduced by an anthropologist and cryptozoologist, Grover Krantz. He was a professor at Washington State University, and he believed that Gigantopithecus was a bipedal ape, so more like us homos. And to give him some credit, at the time he was making these claims, it was believed that Gigantopithecus could have been bipedal, but it was already widely believed that Gigantopithecus was not a homo. No homo. And so while most scientists believe that Gigantopithecus was not a hominid, Grover Krantz still believed that it was some kind of hominid. And he argued that Gigantopithecus was a hominid because the skull would have its foramen magnum positioned to support bipedalism instead of where it would be if the animal walked on all fours. The position of this feature tells scientists of the dominant locomotive style. Basically, the foramen magnum is where the head connects to the rest of the body. An animal that is on all fours full-time will have a foramen magnum towards the back. A full-time bipedal animal like us will have it positioned at the bottom center of the skull. Animals that have the foramen magnum somewhere in between those two positions can adopt some degree of bipedalism, as you can see with the chimpanzee skull. So Grover Krantz argued that if we had a skull for Gigantopithecus, it would have a foramen magnum positioned at the bottom center of the skull, something that would support bipedalism. Grover Krantz was one of the first scientists to reconstruct Gigantopithecus' skull. And if you're familiar with this theory at all, that Gigantopithecus is Bigfoot, you probably have seen Gigantopithecus depicted like this. Now, in Krantz's version, the face is flat and it's definitely more human-like, and that is consistent with a lot of Bigfoot sightings. The inspirations for this reconstruction were Paranthropus and Australopithecus, so 2 hominid species. Krantz also had some casts of supposed footprints, and he named these footprints Gigantopithecus canadensis. So the species that made those prints was called Gigantopithecus canadensis. But again, because Gigantopithecus was likely a quadruped, its feet probably didn't look like these supposed Bigfoot prints, and they would have looked more like the feet of an orangutan. The same skull that Krantz reconstructed has been used for more recent reconstructions, and mainstream scientists believe that Gigantopithecus' skull really should look more like this. Notice how it has a sloped profile and is depicted as a quadruped. So these are characteristics that are more consistent with the pongo or orangutan species. Additionally, remember when I told you that cool story about the C3 and the C4 plants? It's largely believed that the northern region where the Bering Sea land bridge was consisted of grassland and steppe habitats, with more recent evidence suggesting that there could also be marshlands there. The grasslands and the steppe habitats would have more C4, which was not associated with Gigantopithecus' diet. While animals can certainly adapt to changing environments, scientists do not think this took place. As I said before, scientists have teeth from Gigantopithecus during this time, and those teeth show evidence of stress, meaning the teeth were showing that they were trying to adapt to the food they were not used to eating. It was not sustaining them, and it was struggling to find enough food that could sustain them. There has also never been evidence, like fossils, found to support this migration. The Bering land bridge began to form about 46 to 38,000 years ago, and scientists generally believe Gigantopithecus went extinct almost 300,000 years ago. So you see how the math isn't quite mathing. So based on what we know, we just don't think Gigantopithecus could be Bigfoot, and there is not some kind of wild Gigantopithecus population wandering around in North America to account for Bigfoot sightings today, or really ever. And so here's the thing. Scientists will take the information that is right in front of them and use it to form hypotheses and draw conclusions. New information may come to the surface to change those ideas, but until that time comes, it's all speculation. And scientists usually try to avoid speculating too much. But pseudoscientists will look at data and they'll begin to speculate based on the information we don't know.
The Sahara Desert. A fair bit of archaeology has been done in the Sahara Desert, but we're looking at 9.2 million square kilometers of the Sahara Desert. Tell me how much of the Sahara you think has actually been excavated, Flint, by archaeologists. So what's your answer to my question? How much does archaeology really know about the past of the Sahara?
Well, we understand about the domestication of pearl millet in the Sahara, from when the Sahara was much of it was actually more habitable because it was not desert. So we can see the domestication of pearl millet and sorghum.
No.
We can see
My
ice
question
age
is
sites
my
across
question
it.
is related specifically to my subject. Has enough of the Sahara been excavated for archaeology to exclude any possibility that they've missed anything important in the Sahara?
We have found thousands of sites of ephemeral hunter-gatherer remains in the Sahara.
You're still not answering my question. How much of the Sahara has archaeology actually looked at?
I have no idea, but quite a bit, Graham.
But the fact of the matter is, around about 1% of the Sahara has been excavated, and 99% hasn't. So to say that there's no possibility of any traces of a lost civilization in the Sahara seems to me a bit premature.
So they focus too much on the unknown. So while a scientist may say that Gigantopithecus cannot be Bigfoot because of all the evidence I just laid out, a pseudoscientist will still use the absence of any evidence to suggest that there's basically a chance.
More like 1 out of a million.
So you're telling me there's a chance?
So they're saying, well, we haven't found fossils up there, but there could be fossils up there. We're saying that it couldn't have adapted to the changes. They're saying, well, they could have adapted to the changes in the vegetation. They could have gone extinct later than we think, and thus migrated over the Bering Sea land bridge. But we really have no evidence of that. So as far as we know, there is no way Gigantopithecus could be North America's Bigfoot. That's gonna do it for today, guys. Thank you so much for giving this video a watch. If you liked the video, please like, share, or subscribe if you wanna hear more from me, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.